If you're one of the 39% of people that watched my last video, then you probably know what's coming. Welcome to another installment in the series where I try to help you sleep by reading creepypastas from the internet. If this is your first time here, just know there will be no happy endings, only sadness, despair, and maybe some existential dread. So if you can handle that, let's begin. It was 2007, and the setting sun glinted off of his polished silver crown as Reginald approached his final resting place. The carriage carrying his coffin bounced along the rutted road. Inside, nestled among velvet cushions and fresh flowers, lay the corpse of an 8-year-old boy dressed in a miniature top hat and velvet smoking jacket. He had died of a sudden illness 3 days prior, and now his grieving parents were on their way to bury him in the family plot at Blackwood Manor Cemetery. The manor itself loomed over them as they arrived, its silhouette stark against the fiery hues of twilight. Built by Reginald's great-grandfather over 100 years ago, the house had seen better days. Now it looked like a rotting corpse with its boarded-up windows and ivy-choked walls. But inside, there was still electricity and running water. And so the family stayed there rather than sell it. Ever since Reginald's death, his mother couldn't bear the sight of the house, so she moved into a hotel in the city. His father, however, stayed behind and hired 2 caretakers to maintain the property. The younger caretaker was a taciturn man named Abel, while the older was a talkative woman named Bess. Between them, they kept the house habitable. Since his son's passing, the father had become morbidly obsessed with death, spending all day researching various burial rituals. At night, he would pace the length of the house, muttering to himself. Then he would climb into bed next to his wife's empty pillow and cry until dawn. Meanwhile, the 2 caretakers lived in a small cottage on the grounds. One evening, as the rain lashed against the window panes, Bess told Abel about her strange experience working in the house. She said she often heard footsteps in the attic above their living quarters and occasionally smelled lavender and pipe tobacco. She also spoke of the night terrors she had been having ever since she began working there. In her dreams, she was always being chased by a little boy with a hooked nose and a cruel smile. One particularly nasty dream still lingered in her thoughts. She dreamt that she was in the drawing room with Mr. Hemlock, the owner of the house. Suddenly, the room became dark and cold. Then the boy appeared on the rug in front of her, beckoning with a finger for her to follow. As she moved toward him, the room began to spin and the boy's smile widened into a grotesque sneer. That's when she woke up in a cold sweat. She tried to shake off the dream, but Abel warned her not to ignore the signs. He, too, had begun having disturbing dreams, and he believed they were connected to the house. But what exactly did they mean? They could only guess. Now, the following night, while pacing the darkened halls, Mr. Hemlock came across an old trunk tucked under a tapestry in the drawing room. Curious, he sat on the rug and began rummaging through it, pulling out dusty books and yellowed letters. Then he found a folded sheet of paper on which was written a single sentence. "When the raven speaks, all hope is lost?" Puzzled, he looked around the room for a raven, but there wasn't one to be seen. He returned the note to the trunk, unaware that Bess and Abel had witnessed him from the shadows. Shaken by his manic energy, the caretakers decided it was best if he didn't spend the night alone. So they invited him to stay in the cottage with them. Later that night, as a storm raged outside, the 3 sat by the fire in uneasy silence. Suddenly, they heard a loud bang from upstairs. Startled, they exchanged uneasy glances before slowly making their way toward the noise. In the flickering lamplight, the hallway seemed to stretch on forever. Finally, reaching the top of the stairs, they stood outside the room from which the sound had come. Taking a deep breath, Abel knocked on the door. There was no reply. He knocked again, louder this time, and a muffled voice called out for them to go away. As Bess and Mr. Hemlock urged him on, Abel turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. Inside, they found a wardrobe that had toppled over. Clearly, the wind must have blown it open, causing it to hit the floor. Relieved that it was nothing more than a false alarm, They helped Abel return the wardrobe to its place against the wall. Then they made their way back downstairs, leaving the cottage once again to the howling wind and driving rain. Safe in the company of others, they felt their unease slowly fade away. But they were wrong, for their ordeal had only just begun. For the remainder of the week, strange occurrences continued to plague them. Doors slammed shut on their own accord, disembodied footsteps echoed through the halls, and objects seemed to move from one room to the next overnight. Then there were the dreams. Every night Bess dreamt of the little boy, and every morning she woke up with fresh bruises on her arms and neck, as if she had been dragged along the floor by invisible hands. Meanwhile, Mr. Hemlock began to hear whispers in the dead of night, just beyond the range of hearing. Sometimes the whispers grew into a cacophony of screams, and then silence. Abel was having similar dreams, except the boy was always there, standing over him, leering down with amusement. Soon the stress of these nightly horrors took its toll on Mr. Hemlock's already fragile mental state. He began seeing the boy in the corners of his eyes, always watching him, waiting for him to turn around so he could pounce. One afternoon, as he was watering the garden, he swore he saw the boy hiding behind a tree, his face white as bone beneath his wide-brimmed hat. Panicked, he ran back to the house, slamming the door behind him. From that moment on, he refused to leave, barricading himself in his room. Meanwhile, Abel and Bess were struggling to keep him alive. With his mind deteriorating by the day, Mr. Hemlock would often sit staring into space, oblivious to his surroundings. To make matters worse, he stopped eating and drinking, and soon he was too weak to stand. On the advice of a doctor who was called in, Abel and Bess carried him downstairs and laid him on the rug in the drawing room. There they propped him up with pillows and blankets, hoping it would be more comfortable for him. But he only cried out and clutched at his chest. Bess thought that maybe the fresh air would help clear his mind, so she helped him outside onto the patio. For a moment, the sun warmed his skin and the birdsong calmed his shaking hands. But suddenly, the sky darkened and the wind picked up, swirling fallen leaves around their feet. As the first fat raindrops fell from the sky, Mr. Hemlock stirred and whispered something about a raven. Then he slumped over and went still. He had died of a broken heart. Overcome with grief, Bess sank to her knees and wept. Just then, a large raven landed on the patio table, cocking its head to the side as if observing her. She stared back, mesmerized as it ruffled its feathers and let out a harsh caw. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and a deep voice boomed across the courtyard. "When the raven speaks, all hope is lost," it said. Shaken, Bess stumbled to her feet and fled to the safety of the cottage. She didn't stop running until she reached the bedroom, where she collapsed on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. When Abel found her there, she told him what had happened, and together they buried Mr. Hemlock in the family plot the next day. Now, to this day, Bess lives in fear of the raven's return. She keeps an eye on the window at all times, waiting for the moment when it will speak, ending all hope. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Also, feel free to follow me on social media. I'd love to have you there. And remember, if you can't sleep, I'll happily haunt your nightmares.